Be sure to subscribe to WXOU Sports on YouTube. WXOU Sports is the place to be for all things sports from your favorite college radio station. WXOU Sports features live audio broadcasts of all Oakland University home games, including men's and women's basketball. They also feature interviews with athletes and coaches, with highlights and more. Just go to YouTube and search WXOU Sports and hit subscribe. Now, back to the show. Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the GioMoShow, Oakland men's basketball game reviews. I'm your host, Giovanni Moceri, reminding you to be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the GioMoShow for weekly coverage of the Oakland Golden Grizzlies. And this week, another split of the two games for men's basketball, at home against Green Bay for the win and at home against Northern Kentucky for the loss. But with this one, a little bit of a different flavor from last week, as only half of the games had Greg Kampe involved. And joining me today to help break down the madness that was this week is the beat writer for the HoriZone Roundtable covering Oakland basketball. Griffin Beers returns to the GioMoShow. What's up, Griff?
Nice to be here. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure as always.
And as always, you can find Griffin's work on the HoriZone Roundtable. HoriZoneRoundtable.com is where you can find it, and you can follow him on Twitter as well. We'll have all that information in the description below. But Griffin, yeah, we'll start with the biggest headline of this week. Kampe wasn't there for the game against Green Bay, watching from home, and Smitty was the one running the show. So just for that in and of itself, like, how weird was it to not see Kampe there?
It was pretty weird. It was pretty weird to not see him walk out and not hear the loyal fan section that I sit next to give their little Kampe chant at the beginning of the game, and then during the game to not look over and see him stalking the sidelines. It was very strange, but I'm glad that for the team's sake that it didn't cost them in the win or loss column.
Yeah, I mean, like, really, in terms of, like, how the season's been going for Green Bay, like, you couldn't really pick a better time to be missing Kampe when you're at home against the last-place team in the league.
Yeah.
But that first half, man, that was some close stuff. So what'd you make, at least, of the first half, where it was tied at halftime?
Yeah, and I wasn't too surprised by it as someone that watches every team in the league. Green Bay's done that a good amount. They've played well in first halves, and they're going to get a win eventually. They're not a winless bad level team, and they've got a couple injuries. They'll get a couple guys back here soon, and so they'll end up with a win or two at least. So I wasn't too surprised that they hung in there for that first half. They've had a couple games where they were up big even in the first half. I know they had a game against Robert Morris where they had an 18-point lead in the middle of the first half. So I wasn't that surprised, but it was good to see, without Kampe there, that the staff and the players were able to make some halftime, fixes or adjustments or whatever they did and come out fast in the second half.
Yeah, and in that first half, like now knowing that's kind of how Green Bay has been playing, but still, like, I was noticing, like, there were 9 turnovers in that first half, missing guys on defense. I felt there was confusion on offense. Like, all of it just kind of looked like, I mean, not knowing the Green Bay side, that it looked like it was what we were doing. And as much as I love Smitty, I was not happy with them at the first half, just from what I was seeing on the court. But then a 17-3 run to open up the second half, and then all is well with the world.
Yep. Yeah, and it had to be weird for the players too, right? I mean, weird for us, watching from the stands. Imagine, being in those huddles and not hearing that voice. I know in the post-game interview, DQ said, yeah, it was weird, but it was nice not hearing his voice for once. So I'm sure it was an adjustment for them, and I'm glad that they figured it out as the game went on.
Yeah, and I noticed that, and this may just be how DQ has been leading the team throughout the season, but I noticed, like, especially when he was on the bench, like, a little extra vocal, like, kind of behind Smitty on the sideline, shouting things, to his teammates and stuff. Like, DQ has always been that kind of vocal leader for this team this year, right?
Yeah, and it seems like that's a role that he's really embraced. And I know that the other returners, like Isaiah and Baru, their natural personality isn't a rah-rah guy that's going to get in people's face. And I think Isaiah especially has taken a step up in that kind of vocal role, but that is DQ's personality. He's loud. He has a lot of personality. He's got a lot of energy, and so that's just him continuing his kind of leadership vocal role this year.
And all that sums up to an 68-54 win over Green Bay. As Oakland gets away with it, being without Kampe for the one game, but unfortunately, it would not follow through in the Saturday game. The blackout earlier in the day, then the whiteout for that doubleheader. It would be a loss for Oakland against Northern Kentucky, 75-84. And the more I'm looking at this game, the more it just looks like Oakland ran into Northern Kentucky on the wrong day. Like, was there really anything Oakland could have adjusted to swing it in their favor, or was NKU just going to win this thing anyway?
Well, I think they definitely could have won that game. Northern Kentucky isn't a team that you can't beat, right? Especially on your home floor. But they did not look like a team that was 4-7 and had lost 6 in a row. And they had a bunch of different guys step up. With Oakland kind of daring the other guys to beat them, and they did. And so that's kind of the game plan that Oakland went into, and it burned them a little bit. But Kampe said in the press conference, if we played them 10 times with that game plan and how we played, I think we win 9. I think 9 is a little too much for that, but I think Oakland definitely wins that game more times than not, at least with how it played out with the different guys having to step up and make those shots. So, it was a tough loss for Oakland, but it definitely was a team in Northern Kentucky that was desperate for a win, and they've got guys that around that program that have won a lot of games and have won the league before. And so they weren't going to keep losing forever, and unfortunately they picked the day that they picked Oakland or played Oakland to turn that around.
Yeah, and with all that credit given to Northern Kentucky, especially this was game 2 of their Michigan road trip. They lost to Detroit Mercy coming into this one. Yep. But as it pertains to how Oakland played, I just thought that despite the way Northern Kentucky was shooting, and they were shooting great. There was a lot of times where I just felt like they gave the extra effort for loose balls, for rebounds, and just the little stuff like that. I felt Oakland was a little bit, slow to those kind of opportunities. What did you see as far as that kind of physical effort?
Yeah, and I think that can be seen in the rebounding numbers. I don't have it in front of me, but I know it was Oakland might have even lost by a few rebounds, but I know it was
They did, yeah.
They did, yeah. So that has not been the case in the past couple of weeks. Oakland's been a team that's been out rebounding everybody they played, and Thursday was a perfect example. And Green Bay's a little undersized, and had big problems stopping Oakland on the glass. But Oakland went from winning the rebounding battle by I think it was 25 rebounds to losing it a couple days later, and that's why you saw on the scoreboard a different result.
Yeah, and just to give the numbers for people, I got it in front of me. Northern Kentucky, 33 rebounds. Oakland, 31. So out-rebounded by 2. But on the offensive glass, it was 10 for NKU and 7 for Oakland. So a 3 offensive rebounding margin as well, just to paint the picture with some of the numbers.
Yeah, and especially the offensive rebounding numbers. 7 is low for this Oakland team. Baru is a guy that's top 7 or 8 in offensive rebounds in the country, I think. Isaiah Jones and Alan Mukeva are right behind him in their offensive rebounds per game. So to not only have 7 offensive rebounds is tough. That's not even just affecting the offense too. Those extra possessions that you win on offense, the longer time that you have the ball, the longer time the other team isn't scoring. And so if you're not winning those extra possessions, those are extra chances for the opponent to score. And that's probably part of the reason why Northern Kentucky, who is an offense that has struggled, was able to get into the 80s.
And I want to ask this, you with a lot more experience with the Oakland program and me a little bit on the outside of the basketball world. There was more than one stretch where Oakland was scoreless for at least 5 minutes. And at least in the first half, there was a 14-0 run that Northern Kentucky had. Why does Kampe not call a timeout in that kind of situation? Why does he kind of make the guys sweat it out is instead of kind of cutting it short, maybe at a 9-0 run. Like, what do you know that kind of philosophy Kampe has when it comes to timeouts like that?
Yeah, well, I think it actually ended up being a 17-0 run too. I think it was 8-2,
Maybe.
and then I think it was 8-2, and then it got to 19-8. Um, but yeah, he does not like calling those timeouts to stop momentum. He's a guy that likes to play his best players a ton, and he likes to use those timeouts in a way that can maximize their resting potential. And I know that's part of the reason why he doesn't like to call those timeouts. You'll see him call a timeout maybe 45 seconds before a media timeout. And now, Allen gets to sit on the bench for that full timeout and then play only, 30, 45 seconds, and then he gets another whole timeout. So I know that's part of it. And then I know also he trusts himself to be able to call timeout at the end of the half, at the end of the game. And he trusts himself. He feels that if he calls the timeout and is able to get everybody set and on a play that he likes to call, he trusts himself to be able to get the team a basket with the play that he's going to call. So I know he likes to save those timeouts for those situations. But maybe it costs him a little bit there. But sometimes you call timeout and you come out of the timeout flat and that it doesn't work. So
Yeah, so maybe it's not a guarantee that stops the momentum.
Right.
That could be the case
Right.
as well. So overall, that leaves Oakland at a split, 75-84 loss for Northern Kentucky for that split, and now they get one more home game before a road trip at home this Thursday against Youngstown State. I believe that's K. Felder Banner night, right?
Yes, sir.
And then they're on the road next Wednesday against IU Indy. This next stretch of two, Youngstown State ain't no cupcake either.
Yeah, this is probably the biggest game of the season so far, in terms of the league standings. Your Oakland's currently at 7-6, I think, and
Yes.
sitting a game behind Robert Morris and Youngstown State, who are in a tie for that fourth place spot, which is what everyone is trying to get to. And so you've already lost 2 games to Robert Morris, which means you lose that tiebreaker head-to-head, and you've already lost a game to Youngstown. It's going to be really tough to gain ground on both of those teams if you lose both those tiebreakers 2-0. So not only is this a game where if you win, you're tied with Youngstown in that final bye spot, but it's also if you're able to win, now you're tied with Youngstown in that head-to-head tiebreaker. And so it's going to be a huge game. And then obviously, take the standings out of it. You don't want to lose on a night where you're going to have a huge crowd and you're honoring, maybe the best player in school history. So it should be a fun one.
And then for Wednesdays, I'm sure we'll be talking, or at least on the GioMoShow we'll be covering it beforehand. But the road trip against IU Indy, like that, the IU Indy, like despite their rankings, they're down 4-9 in the league. They're at 10th place, but I mean they still can get after it.
Oh yeah, and Youngstown State just found that out. IU Indy went to Youngstown State and beat them on the road, and so going to their place is not going to be easy. But yeah, that this Youngstown State at home, at IU Indy, and then Detroit Mercy after that is probably the biggest stretch of 3 games that Oakland's had so far in terms of games that they need to take advantage of. So it should be exciting.
It's going to be a big week for Oakland, no doubt, in the constant pursuit of the number 4 spot in the HoriZone League. Once again, we thank Griffin Beers for coming back to the GioMoShow from his desk at the HoriZone Roundtable.